Good morning and welcome to Thoughts and Updates. I'm in the inside today because it is raining outside and summer has appeared and it is on its way. I think today is the longest day, it's the solstice. Midsummer, where madness should happen. And down at Stonehenge, I know that the Druids are having difficulty about whether or not they're going to go and see the sunrise this morning. I haven't seen any news reports that they've been there to break COVID-19 regulations. I did see a rather amusing report that somebody would suggest stay at home and play with custard creams. I'll be much the same. However, that aside, lots have been breaking COVID-19 regulations, although, socially distant protests aside. The disgrace of racism came to Scotland because of the way in which people have behaved in George Square in Glasgow. Small minorities, as all over the place, all over the world, have turned up in order to protest at the way in which they're being treated, because they feel aggrieved that the whole COVID-19 and the attack on statues and so on is something they need to protest about. It's their right to so do, but under the current place that we're in, it's nobody's right to go out. And that includes those who are going and complaining about those causes that I happen to agree with, those who are supporting Black Lives Matter. This is not the time to put all lives at risk. And I really don't want to use that phrase, all lives. What I do mean is, in particular, a lot of these rallies include black and minority ethnic communities. And that's where the abject poverty is a contributory factor to them being the biggest single group that are losing their lives thanks to COVID-19. And therefore, having these rallies with large numbers involved increases the possibility that this may be spread into their communities. So that's a concern and a worry, although their cause is a worthy one. Those idiots who were chanting nonsense in the centre of Glasgow and trying to protect statues are just looking for a cause to be outraged about. They are the very people who talk about us having a society that is constantly looking to be offended, and yet they are the ones who are consistently offended about nothing at all because they have no understanding. They have no historical background. They have no knowledge. They have, in essence, very little intelligence when it comes to history and comes to what it is that people are talking about, because they have no wish to engage. What they want to do is they want to go and they want to protest and flex their muscles. Unfortunately, the muscle between their ears is the one that is least used. So that has been happening. It's happening in Glasgow. It's happening all over the world. It's not particularly great. And talking about a lack of intelligence, overnight in Tulsa, the chief of the lack of intelligence was on his feet talking. Now, here is where the world has gone, not just slightly mad, totally mad. Aside from the fact that the good people of Tulsa realised that going to any kind of rally was, just as I have described, a possibility of spreading this killer, and therefore they didn't turn up in their droves in the way that dear old Mr. Donald Trump had hoped for. This rally included, wait for it, the claim by Donald Trump, it's worth it, that he has dealt with the COVID-19 virus highly effectively, as you would expect. It's a cracker. But what he has told his officials to do, pardon me, is, and here it is, slow down testing. And the reason he's told them to slow down testing is so that they don't find more people who've got it. So therefore, the massaging of the figures is something, in terms of the most appalling pandemic that humanity has faced for such an incredible amount of time, is more important than discovering who it is that happens to be ill. Now, there are no words. There are no words. Poll ratings. He didn't drain the swamp. He filled it up. And that's what's not coming out. The fact is that Donald Trump is a consummate politician. He's vacuous. There's nothing there. And it doesn't matter about Bolton's book or this person's testifying in front of Congress or in front of anybody or being in a witness box to say, I swear on the Bible and every other religious book that you want to put in front of me, that Donald Trump is at it. Donald Trump tells us every single day. And like the Wizard of Oz, he's hiding behind a screen. And yet in plain sight is the rally at Tulsa the beginning of the physical demonstration that actually people don't believe he is the Messiah. And will he, if he loses come the election in November, which I hope with every waking hour and every deepest breath that he does for the sake of the American people more than anybody else. I don't necessarily think Joe Biden looks like a credible, brilliant, fantastic, wonderful candidate in comparison. And the last US president who didn't get a second term was Bush, but he was fighting Bill Clinton, a charismatic leader, a man who could command an audience, a man who had a grasp of the language to an extent that he gave the American people a dream that they bought into. Joe Biden doesn't look like that to me, but for God's sake, come on. Make America great. Build a wall. Drain the swamp. Not done. Not done at all. And it needs somebody who's going to attack Donald Trump head on and ridicule the man. Because the majority of his policy is made up not just on the spot, because somebody told him. There's the great leader. That's what I've been told, and he'll have a sheet of paper that says that somebody told him. It won't identify who told him, but it's somebody told him. And the ignorance of the man, even reading Précis of the Bolton book, reading some of the things, the claims that have been made, are hardly surprising or astonishing. And that's the worry. Nobody's sitting there going, I knew it. Everybody's sitting there going, yeah, and what? What comes next in America? Well, I pray and I hope that even if it is an uninspiring leader, a technocrat, somebody who can do it well enough, is better than the seat of the pants way in which you've had to deal with what you've got at the moment. For your sake, I am not religious, but I pray. For my sake this week, there's been a lot of writing, a lot of stuff. Brad sends me people to go and look at, and I also augment it with some of my own. And as a character, a boxer that I really do like, though he's been quite controversial, and that's the Australian Lucas Browne. Turned professional at 30, he's now 41. He did win two versions actually, of the world title. Very minor one, the World Boxing Federation title, and also the WBA regular when he beat Ruslan Chagayev in Chechnya and Grozny, and then ended up being banned because he tested positive for glenbuterol. He's slated in July to fight a Russian called Davtayev, who is a fearsome prospect, by the way. 18 fights, I think 15 by way of knockout in terms of wins, unbeaten. Sugarhouse Stewart, the team behind Tyson Fury, have been training him at the Kronk Gym for 3 years. Looks tough opponent. Lucas Browne always looks as though he's not quite got it. He's not. He's good, but he just is one step off, and he's had two incredible bad defeats against Dillian White. Okay, and it was a jaw-dropping knockout, and it was tough to watch. And Dave Allen. And Dave Allen himself will tell you, I'm domestic level. You know, I'm not up there, but Dave Allen beat a former world champion. So that is the focus of my musing. Boxing's back. Bob Arum is doing a Tuesday and a Thursday thing in the bubble in MGM Grand Las Vegas. I am seeing a lot of stuff happening abroad. Not a lot. There's nothing happening in the UK. July, rapidly coming up, is going to be when we're going to start to see boxing. I think the first one is actually slated for Aberdeen. It's not a British Boxing Board of Control sanctioned card, but one by the British and Irish Boxing Association, which are the rival. And boxing, but boxing does have enough of the alphabet soup when it comes to sanctioning bodies. This is another one within the United Kingdom, and It grew out of the Maltese Boxing Commission, which had sanctioned the Derek Chisora, David Haye fight, which under Frank Warren that wasn't being sanctioned by the British Boxing Board of Control. So they're sanctioning a behind doors event in Aberdeen, which will include the return to the ring of Scott Harrison, former world champion, Scottish world champion, who is wrongly, in my view, been denied a licence by the British Boxing Board of Control. So that has a degree of excitement. Of course, across in America, the week didn't go well. You had a controversial decision. You had a fight that couldn't take place because the manager of the opponent tested positive for COVID-19. But good for them. You know, that's a positive rather than a negative for me. We have got one world championship fight coming up. So the WBO, the WBA, the WBC are beginning to be seen to sanction fights. So they're getting their sanctioning fees in. I thought about a couple of weeks ago or last week about whether or not the sanctioning bodies are going to manage to come through this. Of course, individual sports people are beginning to fall away by the wayside. A number of boxers are announcing their retirement because they needed to fight in order to survive, and now they've got to go away and do something to earn money, and they'll end up in places like supermarkets and stuff. I noticed there was a guy at United's captain was talking about at one point he was an under 19 for Scotland, and the next minute he was working in a supermarket because he was released by Dundee United and went from full-time as a sportsman to part-time. So I had to get money. Ended up at Stirling Albion before going back full-time at Dunfermline. So sports people need that kind of support, and many are beginning to go, do you know what, I need to go and earn for my family. Theatre is in much the same state. I hear on the grapevine that the Scottish Government have jumped in to support the Fringe, to give them some kind of financial support because of the massive amount of money that it generates for the Scottish economy. Hopefully the English, the Welsh and the Northern Ireland Assembly, all those three governments will come together and do something for their national organisation in the arts and individual theatres, because coming out of all of this is going to be interesting for them all. I'll be looking at that this coming week. Fringe reviews this week. Moving into theatre, I saw a couple of things online. Scottish Mental Health Arts and Film Festival In Her Shadow ended up with, and I'm looking about because I don't know if I still have a book of poetry here, and it was a real boost to me to see this and to hear it. In Her Shadow, a performance directed by Cora Bissett. There was two things I watched this week directed by Bissett, which was a 2015 performance, which was just great. It was fantastic. Very physical aerial circus in terms of the hoop and the aerial were involved. Really good stuff. Really, really good stuff. Ending in a poem by Jenny Lindsay. Well worth going to see if you can get hold of it, although I think it's coming off being free online very shortly, if not gone already. And Rebus Lockdown Years. I love John Rebus. Character by Ian Rankin. So written by Rankin, played by Brian Cox in his apartment in New York, as if he's in Edinburgh, and directed by Cora Bissett. And I suggest if there was a holy trinity in Scottish theatre, that might be it. And it's a brilliant display of his acting chops when it comes to the text, the movement, the acting off script of a particular character. And Scenes for Survival have been great, and it's been wonderful to see B. Webster, who was a long story about B, one of Kieran, my son's friends, has been commissioned by the National Theatre Scotland to add to that canon of work, which is great. But also, I've been watching Crossing Lines this week, seeing former Youth Theatre member Stuart Martin on a small screen. Song before acting in the same scene as Dustin Hoffman. Now he's opposite Donald Sutherland. Marvellous, great, wee boy fair. Got it. Absolutely tremendous. So that's been a bit of a boost. Jenny was also in the youth theatre at one point, worked with her mum, blah, blah, blah. So to finish, the Scottish Football Supporters Association, I wrote this week about can a snake eat itself? Scottish football's doing it. Hearts and Partick Thistle are perfectly right to go to the court session, to go to law, and to try and find out whether or not the Scottish Professional Football League have acted illegally. Ultra Vires out of their constitution, perfectly within the right to do so. So are, by the way, Raith Rovers and Dundee United and Cove Rangers to announce that they are going to take legal advice over their promotion, because it is promotion and relegation that both Hearts and Partick Thistle are fighting. And yeah, they're looking for £10 million worth of compensation, which may well bankrupt the SPFL, may well therefore cause massive concerns and issues for the other 40 clubs in the SPFL. And that's going to be an interesting case to watch. And now the Scottish Football Association are looking to see whether or not they've breached the Articles of Association, that's Hearts and Partick Thistle, and may take action against them. Football is eating itself. And the reason for that is because it itself set up and established a set of rules that were ridiculous. And that is 80% need to be in favour of X for X to win. No democracy in the world works on that basis. No democracy works on that basis. Democracy can't work on that basis. So one of the things that happened was, during the course of the week, Sportsound brought in a guy that they believe might have something original and new to say, and that was Stuart Regan. So my little piece this week that took the mickey out of Scottish football was Stuart Regan applies for a job as the press officer for the American consulate in Edinburgh. You can find out whether or not he got that job as two ridiculous figures are put together. So that's the beginning of where I started and where I'm going to end today. And next week, as we come out of lockdown, here's hoping there's a possibility that I might be able to get in a car and go somewhere and go back to being out and about. Until then, bye for now and keep safe.